Welcome, everybody, to Morning Mindset Cafe. I'm your host for today, Christian Williams, also known as C. Will. I'm filling in for Charlene Burke. This is her show, and she has been on a mastermind retreat in a nice mansion with a lake and flowers and all that good stuff. And so she's been having a good time. However, she'll be back tomorrow, so make sure you come back for her. And follow me as well. I'm that black sun up there, you know, to show the enlightenment, right? So I'm very excited. I started writing about something today about enlightenment, but that's not what this show is about. So what this show is about is, can you attract happiness, right? Everybody wants to be happy. Everyone's always talking about this law of attraction stuff, and everyone's like, oh, it's just all this magic stuff that means nothing. But however, this is a very thorough and concise understanding of how to actually attract happiness, how to actually be happy, really, is what this chapter is about. And I think he does a pretty good job at explaining it. So, not Martin Luther, I'm sorry, Abraham Lincoln said, "It has been my observation that people are just about as happy as they make up their minds to be." Now, I'm always telling people they need to have emotional goals or state of being goals. Like when you start your day, how do you want your day to go? How do you want it to be? Like, how do you want to feel throughout your day? Do you want to be clear? You want to be confident? Do you want to be happy? I want to be buoyant or optimistic, positive. When you have goals like that, then you seek to make them happen. That's the point of having a goal, right? And as you seek to make it happen, you do what you need to do to keep yourself in that space. That being said, I think Abraham's quote here is right on point. People are just about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And in the book, it goes on to say there's very little difference in people, but that difference makes a big difference, and it's a little difference called attitude. So the positive mental attitude makes all the difference. People who want to be happy will adopt a positive mental attitude and be influenced by PMA, the PMA side of the talisman. Thus, happiness will be attracted to him. And those in turn who turn on negative NMA make a business of being unhappy. They don't attract, they repel happiness. In other words, make it a point to be happy, to devote your energy to being happy. And the key way to do this that they put in here is to make other people happy, right? Because at least what I've learned is we are about others. Even though we may not know it, we may not think we have this altruistic heart. And it's, if you really think about why you're doing what you're doing, regardless of what it is, it's usually for somebody else, for other people. Like we want attention, we want love, we want people to give to us, or we want to give to other people, right? And so it's really about other people. And to give and to do that, we want to have a good relationship with them. And funnily enough, the majority of this chapter is actually about how to build powerful, strong, and loving, happy relationships, right? I mean, that's not what they say, but that's what they're actually talking about. So let's get into it. Happiness is an elusive, transitory thing. And if you set out to search for it, you will find it evasive. But if you try to bring happiness to someone else, then it comes to you. So then it goes into this story about this couple that gave a Christmas tree to the old next door neighbors, right? They were this old elderly couple, and they were a young couple, so they put up, got a Christmas tree and decorated and everything, and brought over to their house the day before Christmas, and it just really made the other couple so happy. They talked about it almost the whole year afterwards, every time they went and visited them, and it really filled them with, that warm happiness that you get from doing something good for somebody else without any kind of you know expectation of anything in return, but you just really want to make somebody else happy. You really want to brighten their life. And it's unique. I mean, we get happy from accomplishments, we get happy from making a sale or all that, but you really get, it's a different kind. It's a more deeper and radiating sort of happiness when you actually do something for someone else. It feels really great. Um, so he goes into here about Helen Keller. So Helen Keller once wrote, anyone who out of the goodness of his heart speaks a helpful word, gives a cheering smile, or soothes over a rough place in another's path knows that the delight he feels is so intimate, a part of himself, that he lives by it. The joy of surmounting obstacles which once seemed unremovable and pushing through the frontier of accomplishment further. What joy is there like unto it? If those who seek happiness would stop only one little minute and think, they would see that the delights they already experience are as countless as the grass at their feet, or the dewdrops sparkling upon the morning flowers. Beautiful words, yes? So I want to know if anybody has had an experience of that sort of happiness that comes from sharing with somebody else. I'd love to hear about it. And has it been addictive? Like, do you want to do it again? When you do it once, do you want to do it again? Okay, maybe you don't feel like sharing. Some people don't like sharing what they do for others. However, if you have done something and you want to share how that has affected you and whether it makes you want to do it again, I'd love to hear about it. Okay. So Helen Keller was unique. She counted her blessings and was profoundly grateful for them. Now, if anybody doesn't know who Helen Keller is, I'm going to say it just for the sake of, keeping everybody on the same page. She was born deaf and blind and mute. So she had a lot of obstacles. And I like this about her. If you heard this in her words, she says, the joy of surmounting obstacles which once seemed unremovable and pushing the frontier of accomplishment further. For what joy is there like unto it? So that was an extra point she threw in there. So the first, the main point was about sharing happiness with others and helping others to make their lives better. But she also talked about overcoming obstacles, and she had a great appreciation for it. And I think that's a lesson there too, as well. When you're talking about happiness and when you're just talking about life in general, a lot of us uh, we don't like our unmovable barriers and obstacles, right? And I mean, who does? But she developed such a positive mental attitude, tremendously positive mental attitude, because out of all the people in the world, she had the right to just be dejected and depressed and all that stuff, right? And however, what made the difference for her was one teacher who decided that they believed in her and was going to stick with her and do everything they could to help her through. I'm saying they because I don't know if it was a man or a woman, but that's something right there. That one teacher helped Helen Keller change her life, and through Helen Keller's transition, she was able to help countless others through her example. So there's a flip side to this coin, as always. You got positive PMA and NMA, the negative mental attitude. So the choice is yours. And when you're talking about attracting happiness, what does that mean? You can repel it as well. I know you know people who are always having problems, right? You know, us in the positive, optimistic world, we have opportunities and challenges, right? It's all linguistics. But these people just have trouble. No matter what happens to them, it just isn't good. And this is because they are always sharing their troubles with others. Every time you talk to them, there's a long list of problems, right? And everything that happens, even if it's good, like there's suspicion thrown on it because it has to be bad in some way. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't ever share your problems with people, to help you work through them, but it's just a frame of thinking, right? And we all know people like this, and unfortunately, I just tend to, it's like we just have to avoid them, right? It's either can I change your frame of thinking into a positive way so that we can actually have a conversation about the solution, or how can we, uh, work through it? Because we can't just keep talking about the problem. Share how we overcame them. Um, so yeah, we all have problems, but it's about really changing that. That's a good way to shift that frame of thinking. However, if you choose to stick with the negative mental attitude, you're just going to get more of it. So They go on to talk about an interesting kind of person, which is somewhat similar to what I used to be back in the day. Said there are many lonely people in this world who long for love and friendship, but never seem to get it. Some repel that which they seek with a negative mental attitude. Others curl up in their corners and never venture out. So I used to be very shy. However, they secretly hope that something good will come to them, but they do not share any of the good which they enjoy. They do not realize that when you withhold from others that which you have, which is good and desirable, your own portion of good and desirable diminishes. However, those who have the courage to do something about their loneliness and they find their answer in sharing good and beauty with others. So I found this to be very true. A lot of times we'll sit in our rooms and we'll, or like me, I was shy, I was an introvert, you know, solo, lone wolf kind of person. I still kind of am. However, I do recognize a lot of beauty in the world, a lot of interest, in philosophy and beautiful thoughts and the interconnectedness of all. I can see a lot of things, right? Let's not get into all that woo woo stuff, but I can see a lot, right? And I'm aware of a lot. However, it wasn't until I started to share that with other people that I actually started to increase my happiness, right? I was actually not, not only was I shy and, introverted, I was very cynical and judgmental about the world, right? But when I started to share my observations and, things like that with people, and they started to understand it, or just to understand it on appreciate the effort really, then your happiness increases because that's what you're sharing, right? And it comes back. It's so interesting how that works. How the some people call it karma. Some people call what goes around comes around. There's all different kinds of explanations for it, philosophies for it, but it is a true and observable fact. When you put it into practice. So now we go into a story here about this guy named Charles. Let's see if I can say this word, Steinmetz. I know Charlene is probably laughing at me because I'm always mispronouncing people's names. And this guy is from somewhere, not America. So you got to forgive us, Americans. We only know how to say American people's names. It's not that we're inconsiderate or anything, but that's just how our tongues were trained, right? And so, uh, because I've had some people bite my head off for saying the name wrong, like, no, I just don't know, and I try. But anyway, the point of this is Charles, he was born with a disfigured spine and he looked funny and all that. And of course, he had a kind of hard uh, social life because of that. And, he was rejected by a lot of his classmates, and they wouldn't even let him graduate school because he was actually very bright, right? He was very smart. But he graduated with honors and he bought the suit and everything, and they wouldn't let him come to the graduation. So, anyway, you know what he decided to do? That he would use his abilities not to attract notice and to satisfy his own ego, but to further the good of mankind. So he would share what he had with the world, right? The good that he had, his intelligence, his spirit. He decided he would share that. Long story short, he got rejected from a lot of jobs, but he eventually got a job with General Electric, and he worked in the shadows basically. But he cultivated friendships with the people around him and just put in good work and stayed long. Like he was a draftsman. Working $12 a week, I think. I thought it said hour, but no, it said week. And this was back in the day, of course. But anyway, long story short, through his continual positivity and putting out good work and working longer and harder than he needed to, and he started studying, electrical engineering while he was working on his time off. He ended up um, attracting the attention of the plant manager, who said, you're just such a great person. Like you're just always putting in such a positive attitude, and you've learned so much, and your mind is so sharp. So you can basically have the factory, not have it as far as like he didn't sign it over to him, but he said you can do whatever you want here. Anything you want to do it. Right. And so he ended up creating over 200 patents and really, increasing the quality of life for everybody in the whole country because of all the gifts that he gave as far as his technology. He also, ended up owning a home and shared it with a couple that he liked or whatever. So he was able to have a whole happy, fulfilling life, both professionally and personally. And so that really shows what you give is what you get, right? You know, Helen Keller, Charles Smith, these people weren't born, with a lot of the, blessings that we have. We can think, we can see, we're reasonable uh, people. I was going to say something else, but it sounded offensive. But we don't have any. A lot of us, some of us, don't have like tremendous handicaps, right? Especially appearance, like Charles did, and Helen Keller probably did because she couldn't see, right? So that makes people off putting to them. However, they maintained that positive mental attitude and caused a transformation. It's people like them that change the way we think and see people who have uh, disabilities, or there's, I don't know if that's the right politically correct way to say they anymore. Anyway, happiness, right? Can you attract happiness? So before I go on looking at the notes, it's like what you put out is what you get back, and it's not necessarily um, uh, because there's some big mystical spirit that's saying, okay, he's putting out good stuff, let me send him good stuff back. It's because it's cause and effect, right? It's reaction. If I'm nice to you, you're going to be nice to me, or you'll have the inclination to be nice to me, right? And a lot of times it takes some effort. And that's what this really talks about. Because a lot of, especially back in this time, I don't know if they really knew about all the personality tests and how different personalities work different from each other and all that. But that's what they really get into in this next part. They talk about, okay, if you have two forceful personalities, um, and one of them has to use positive mental attitude if they're going to get along with each other, right? At least one of them has to. If not, they're just going to bite each other's head off and keep going back and forth, back and forth, right? Um, and once they start to recognize, okay, we're both wanting to control the situation, be dominant, so let me be aware of that, right? And maybe I can be a little more yielding, or maybe I can be a little more understanding. So this is actually an easy solution when you recognize you actually do have the same kind of personality. So what would you do? Like, how would you want the person to react to you? So they had a example here where the mother and the son, they were just going back and forth at it all the time. And the son was like, I got to move out. I can't deal with her. And their recommendation was just go back and just be agreeable. If you want to argue, don't say anything, or just yield to her and just say thank you and appreciation and all that, and just keep it moving. And that's what he did, and they just got along awesomely. However, you don't have to like yield to everybody. It's just more about how would you want the other person to react, especially when you recognize you have the same kind of personality and you're like bumping heads, right? A lot of times, I mean, I've done it myself. I'm like, okay, I see us. We both have very clear viewpoints, and they're different, right? Um, However, I don't have to be right. Like, I don't have to change the other person, right? I can just hear the other person's viewpoint and say, okay, I get it, right? I understand, and let it go, right? Because when you have two very strong personalities and you're going head to head like that, it's like, what's going to happen if you just keep going back and forth? It's not going to get any better, and neither one of you are going to change your viewpoint, right? At least not in that moment, right? And if and what I've noticed is if you just allow the other person to have their difference of opinion, and maybe when they come back, they'll say, you know what, I was thinking about something, and I think they. What you'll notice is because everyone will change. We all change. We've all changed our viewpoints since we were 12, right? We don't think the same way we did when we were 12. However, if you've had that strong personality, the tendency is not to do it right there in the conversation, right? So if you allow the person to to not be antagonized by you, then they'll be able to change their minds and save face, right? Um, and they need time to digest, right, and really incorporate it into their way of thinking and understanding. Now, that's for two people who think alike. However, there are people who don't, right? There's all kinds of tests out there now, personality tests, and you can start to understand other people, right? And how they think and why they're not responding the way that you think they should. And a lot of times it's because they're just different. We have so much misunderstanding in the world, and a lot of it is just because we are different, you know, and we think differently, we process differently. Um, but really taking the time and the effort to understand other people is is so appreciated. And to me, what works, even if you don't have the time to go study all these different personality types and psychology and all these other books, right? Really, it just takes patience and, like I was saying, not making yourself have to be right in that moment. Right? If you just take the time just to be quiet and observe and see how the other person is thinking and what kind of brain they're using. To break it down simply, you got your left brain and your right brain, right? Your left brain is very analytical, it's very linear, it's very defined. Your right brain is, more fluid and creative, and people have a predominance of one or the other. And so, what's it going to be? Are you going to force your way of thinking on them, or are you going to start to recognize that's the way they're thinking and use that to communicate? So anyway, I am, what's the word again? Pontificating. I've been talking a while. I would love, how do you make relationships work? Because I'm really not an expert on this. Nice. I'm talking a lot, but I feel like we always have more to learn. I know I do as far as relationships go. So how do you keep your relationships working? Like, with your significant other or your children, people who you recognize you do have a similarity to, or you recognize that you do have a difference with. Like, how do you make that work? How do you keep that relationship strong, or healthy, or at least manageable? I really want to know. So please feel free to jump in and talk about how you stay happy in your relationships. And another thing they talked about was, there's happy and there's content and then there's unhappy, right? Content is more like you're just content. You're not necessarily like, hey, or you're not, upset or just happy, but you're just like kind of like in that neutral space. Um, and how we can, the optimal place to be is either happy or content, right? Just try to keep yourself in those areas. I thought I saw someone calling in there. I'm sorry if I missed it. Feel free to call back in. Um, But a recommendation they gave here was the customer is always right attitude. It gets results. So like if you're dealing in a relationship, if you just take on that frame of mind where, okay, I'm gonna make this relationship work somehow. Maybe pushing my buttons now, making me unhappy. How can I find a way to understand them and actually get the results that I want? That's why I really like NLP, because the stands for neuro linguistic programming, and one of the ideas behind it is the meaning of the communication is the results that it gets, right? Because a lot of times we're attached to the words that we use and the way that we use to explain something. However, it's not, if it's not communicating, if it's not getting the results from the other person, it's not working, right? You need to change it somehow because it's about the results. And the truth of the matter is we're all different. All of our brains work differently. So you are having a feeling, you're having a thought, you're having something you're trying to communicate to someone else and you're using your words and they're not getting it, right? Then it's up to you to figure out, okay, what are the words that they will understand? What is a way that I can communicate this feeling to them? You know, that's another reason I like music, right? Because that transcends a lot of that frustration with the words, right? Music and dance and all that is another way to communicate. Um, and another thing they suggest here is writing letters, even to like your spouse or someone you're married to, right? And this was back in the day, and I guess a lot of times they did a lot of writing. Aligning worldviews is really challenging. Yes, it is challenging. So Matt here says aligning worldviews is challenging, and what I've been able to do is to communicate within their frame, because a lot of things, way more than you would assume in when you first try this out, can be fit into another person's worldview, right? least the important parts of the understanding. I feel like just about with every religion, every idea in every religion can be expressed in the other religion's frame of reference of understanding, right? Because ultimately, underneath of all these are universal truths. However, you kind of just have to accept that first to make it work. Because if you don't think that the other religion holds that same truth that yours or whatever it has, or even worldviews like politics, right? It's very challenging, yes, but it's possible. And a lot of it takes you not having to win the person over to your whole system, right, or to your way of communicating that those understandings. But writing letters, yes. So writing letters is very good, and there's a good reason for it here. He puts when you write, there's two really good reasons. When you write a letter, you crystallize your own thinking on paper. Your imagination is developed by recollecting the past, analyzing the present, and perceiving the future. The more often you write, the more pleasure you may take in writing. By asking questions, you, as the writer, direct the mind of the recipient into desired channels, and you make it easier for him or her to respond to you. Thus, when he or she does, they be when they become the writer, and you receive the additional joy as the recipient. The receiver of the letter you write is forced to think in terms of you. If your letter is well thought out, both his or her reason and emotions can be directed along the desired paths. Inspiring thoughts will be imprinted inevitably in their memory, and when they are being recorded into their subconscious mind as he or she reads. So what that is basically saying is you, when you write, one thing it does is it makes you have to think and understand and clearly articulate what you're saying, right? It helps you break it down, so you really understand it when you write. Because when you write it, it's a whole lot different than talking. Because talking, we can kind of say what we want to say, and then we say some other things that really don't fit, or it kind of fit, and we're kind of working it out while we're talking. However, when you write, you normally write one or two sentences, and then you still go through that same method or process that you do when you're talking. However, you don't say all those extra words that you do when you're talking, right? And you just filter them out, and you say, okay, how can I say that? And normally, like 10 words or 10 uh, sentences get put into that next one sentence. So it becomes a whole lot more clear. And then you begin to crystallize it and understand it better. And therefore, that allows the person who receives it to understand it a whole lot more succinctly and clearly. And it also guides their thinking, right? That's why it's so good to read these positive books, right? Because it puts our thinking along a clear line. Like these ideas are clearly expressed, you know, like even in this chapter, how can I be happy? How can we be happy? And it goes, okay, got to have a positive mental attitude. Um, you got to be able to get along with others, right? And so that's what this is about now. How do you get along with others? And you got to be understanding. You got to give happiness, and you get it back. So there's clear thoughts that are being expressed, one by one, and then at the end, he's going to summarize it up. And so, like similarly, like when you write, that's what they told you in school, right? You write your main idea, supporting thoughts, main idea, supporting thoughts, and what you do is, it's to me, it's like you're building with ideas. Those blocks are clear cut. If you're using bricks, they have to fit with each other, and then eventually you have a structure, and that's that communication that has been put together in someone else's mind, and you have then built an uplifting idea, hopefully, right, of how you can be in the romance. It's okay how our lives are together, or how you make me feel is thus clearly communicated to the woman, like in poetry, right? I used to do poetry as a young man as well, right? And so the woman starts to see, okay, this person thinks beautifully, right? And they think beautifully about me. Um, and that evokes that feeling in that other person. In the same way, and that's why he's really recommending, if you're in a relationship, try to write letters to each other. It doesn't have to end just because you're um, married, right? Write letters to each other, and that you can get a deeper understanding of each other. I think it was Tony Robbins or somebody talk about relationships, and that no, it was Chris Howard. He said relationships really end when you stop learning about each other. When you think you know everything about the other person, right? You should be always in a state of learning more and more about the other person because you know, we're so intricate and complex, and there's always more to us. And it's about that curiosity and desire to know more and understand more about the other person that creates that draw, continues that attraction, right? And keeps it going, keeps it healthy. Um, so, can you create happiness? So the answer is yes. Of course, you can attract. Oh, not create. Can you attract happiness? So the answer is yes. And how you can attract happiness with PMA, a positive mental attitude will attract you all the health, wealth, and happiness you desire. Now I'm reading back from the book here. A positive mental attitude consists of such characteristics as faith, hope, charity, optimism, cheer, generosity, tolerance, tact, kindliness, honesty, initiative, truthfulness, straightforwardness, and good old common sense. So I'm going to read this thing by Napoleon Hill. How do you guys create happiness? Like, is there something you do, you know, every day to create happiness, or is it a mindset that you kind of adopt? I'd like to know about. Like, I'm really into mindset as well, and that kind of goes with the. So feel free to call in. Feel free to make it a discussion, or just go ahead and put it in the chat, right? Um, is there a mindset that you like to take on every day, or how do you get yourself in that mindset that you know is good for you? Like, do you listen to music? Um, do you think positively about your day and how it's going to go, or how you want it to go? What method do you use, or do you use a method at all? Or do you just kind of do what's the word, damage control when it starts to get out of hand, when you start going down the wrong road? So be honest, like, because I know that's generally how most people live. I used to live that way and still do sometimes when I don't get it together. Uh, in the morning the way I should. Sometimes it's just damage control, right? You just go and you're going and going, and next thing you're in this weird negative space. And you're like, oh, how did I get here? Oh, everything sucks. Everything sucks. Everybody sucks, and you're like, oh, this is not where I should be in my mental space or in your results, because it's normally in that instance, it's normally a matter of the circumstance now has devolved into madness, right? You're like, oh, this sucks. How did I get here? What can I do to fix it? You know, then you can switch your talisman over from NMA to PMA, right? Of course, it's a lot harder when you're there now because you got all this momentum of negativity that has built up, frustration or whatever, and you're like, okay, I got to turn this ship around, right? Um, and we talked about that the other day. Sometimes music, you got to break state, you got to move, shift your space, move physical activity, and get back in the PMA. So I'm going to read this thing called Happy Valley. I think you'll really enjoy it. I didn't put it in my notes because it's kind of long. Okay. So this was written by Napoleon Hill, who is the co-author of this book. And he wrote an article called Contentment. And you may find it helpful. It's pretty cool. Okay, here it goes. The richest man in all the world lives in Happy Valley. He is rich in values that endure and things he cannot lose, things that provide him with contentment, sound health, peace of mind, and harmony within his soul. Here is an inventory of his riches and how he acquired them. I found happiness by helping others to find it. I found sound health by living temperately and eating only the food my body requires to maintain itself. I hate no man, envy no man, but love and respect all mankind. I am engaged in a labor of love with which I mix play generously, therefore I seldomly grow tired. I pray daily not for more riches, but for more wisdom with which to recognize and embrace and enjoy the great abundance of riches I already possess. I speak no name save only to honor it, and I slander no man for any cause whatsoever. I ask no favors of anyone except the privilege of sharing my blessings with all who desire them. I am on good terms with my conscience, therefore it guides me accurately in everything I do. I have more material wealth than I need because I am free from greed and covet only those things I can use constructively while I live. My wealth comes from those with whom I have benefited by sharing my blessings. The estate of Happy Valley, which I own, is not taxable. It exists mainly in my own mind and intangible riches that cannot be accessed for taxation or appropriated except by those who adopt my way of life. I created this estate over a lifetime of effort by observing nature's laws and forming habits to conform them. Isn't that nice? So there are no copyrights on Happy Man's Success Creed. If you want to adopt it, the creed can bring you wisdom, peace, and contentment. Free to use it how you will. There's a couple great ones in here. I love the one, I will speak no name, save to honor it. I slander no man for any cause whatsoever. Try that on for a while. You don't you will recognize you don't really need to talk bad about anybody for any reason, even if they're a problem, right? What I mean, like the majority of the time that we talk bad about people, first of all, we're not trying to solve a problem. Like unless you're in management or you're a parent, um, when someone's acting up, okay, how do you adjust? How do you understand why they're doing that? How can you communicate to them to help them change? However, the majority of us, and I'm not, blame this in this, when we're talking about other people, it's not because we're trying to help them. It's because we're just complaining about them, right? We're just talking bad about them, and you're actually building strength and momentum to their bad traits. You're not helping them at all, right? And you're not helping yourself. What you put out is coming back to you as well, because what you're doing is you're also anchoring that negativity in your mind, right? You're putting them in that box. You're saying this is how they are. So the next time they come to you, and even if they try to be different, if they try to be better, you still force them, so to speak, to be that negative way that you have judged them to be, right? So you actually have to let that go and allow them to change, because I don't know if you ever had that experience. Okay, like say you have been losing your temper with your husband or your girlfriend or your friend or somebody for a week, right? And then you do whatever, you go on your walk, you pray, you go to church, whatever it is, you decide to forgive them, and the next time you go to deal with them, they're still like, hold up, you are an angry person. You're like, no, I'm not angry, I forgive you. No, you're an angry person, I gotta watch you, and next thing you know, you're back to being angry again because they have put you in that box. So it's the same way with somebody else. If you want a better response from them, don't talk about everything that's wrong with them and how, they're just, incorrigible, right? You got to allow them the space to change and to be better. And that's why I just like to see the best in people, right? And expect the best of them, regardless of how many times they fall on the face. When you allow them that space to change for the better, you will notice they start to, right? Because most people in their world don't, right? They don't give them the space to grow and to be better, right? Even when they're trying to. And I'm very passionate about that topic, especially because for kids, right? They make mistakes, they're growing, they're going through things, and you know, they're learning every day. They may go to school one day and come back a totally different person, right? The teacher may have told them something, or they learned something, history in class or whatever, and they come home and, oh, you're just a messy, disorganized kid, right? And then they clean the room and they're like, what you do that for? Were you trying to get something from me? Give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they're really trying to change, and do it every day, all the time. That's my recommendation. That's at least that's my 2 cents. Okay, so he has a lot of good things in here. Be on good terms with your conscience. Um, give. Anyway, I'm not going to get back into that. So there's another thought here by the power. It's in the book called The Power of Faith by Rabbi Louis Benstock. Benstock. I know I'm probably saying his name wrong as well. Anyway, Rabbi Lewis wrote in The Power of Faith on the subject of happiness. Man was born together, all of one piece. It is the kind of world he fashions that has torn him apart. A world of folly, a world of falsehood, a world of fear. With the power of faith, let him put himself together again. Faith in himself, faith in his fellow men, faith in his destiny, faith in his God. Then and only then will the world be truly together. Then and only then will man find happiness and peace. So that thought to me, it goes back to the kind of like what you expect, you'll get, and what you give is what you get as well. You know, we have such division and antagonism in our own minds, in our own view of the world, right? In the view of each other. And if we can start to change that and recognize, hey, actually, no, I have hope. So I like to use the word hope because, faith, some people scare that word, right? So hope. I hope and I know that I was actually writing about it this morning. We are going through a transition for the better, right? Because you have two ways of viewing change. You can say, oh, it's going down to catastrophe, or it's actually a transition to something better, right? Like when you see the construction out there, right? If you were the dirt, if you were the grass, or if you were the earth, and you had consciousness, right? Saying, okay, I'm sitting here, I'm chilling, and all of a sudden, all this destruction just comes. It just comes and just tears up all the grass, all the dirt, all the worms that are running for their life. And it's like, what is going on here? Terror, death, destruction. What is happening? We know because we're humans, right? A higher order is actually being created, right? We have decided to organize the earth and the same materials that we're tearing up into a different order, right? It's not the end of the world. And so if you think about it that way, I know that's a kind of a messy analogy, but it's just the understanding that transition has to happen. Energy is never created or destroyed; it's transmuted, right? So transmute during a transformative state or time, it can be viewed either as destruction or construction, right? However, both is happening, and I guess where you decide to go and how your reality reflect is what you decide to agree with. You could say, I am the dirt, I am the earth, and here I am being destroyed, or I'm the building that is going to create jobs and plenty for everybody, and hopefully repay its debt to Gaia or to the earth in some way. But anyway, let me not get into that. Starting to think like an Indian. I am an Indian, by the way. I'm not being racist. Okay, here are some thoughts to steer by. Back to the Abraham Lincoln. It has been my observation that people are just about as happy as they make up their minds to be. So, will you be happy? If not, will you make up your mind not to be unhappy? We would rather you just be unhappy, not unhappy. Aaron's put some words in here. He says, when I wake up, I run through my mind all the positive things, positive perspectives, and get my mind focused on the positive. So this is how he gets his mind framed, for the day in the positive. When I get out of bed, I also read my chief aim and a chapter from a motivational book. Gets his mind thinking along those positive lines. Awesome sauce, Aaron. I like it. There is very little difference in people, but that difference is a huge difference. And that is a positive or negative mental attitude. Now, I didn't really get too deep into the negative mental attitude people because I think we understand it. But yeah, don't have a negative mental attitude, right? Uh, I don't like telling people what not to do, right? I like giving people suggestions on ways to live better, right? because there's enough. To me, there's enough of people in our lives, in our world, telling everybody what's wrong with them and why they shouldn't do that. Right? Okay, I get it. And nobody and people really don't appreciate being told what to do either. Right? So I just say, okay, this is what works for me. These are some suggestions. Right? How can we be better? How do you how can you be better if you choose? Right? There's all these great wise people who lived, who died, who accomplished so many great things. And how did they do it? Let's talk about that. So here you see that I'm not telling you what you should do. I'm just offering thoughts, right? Because it's really up to us. Nobody can control you, right? No one can say, okay, you're going to be a good person now. I have decreed it, and thus by my power, you will be happy and good, right? No, you really have to make your own mind, and every moment is a choice, right? So this positive mental attitude is really about choice. Which direction do you want your mind to go? And what do you choose? Do you want to be happy? Right? Can you attract happiness? All right, what are the rest of these thoughts here? One of the surest ways to find happiness for yourself is to devote your energies towards making someone else happy. Again, I open the seed. I love this topic the most, right? Because it has allowed my life a lot of transformation. So I kind of hinted at it earlier, but that has definitely been the solution that has always worked for me. Um, as far as happiness, as far as connection, as far as fulfillment, everything in life. I guess that's my message. That's where I'm at, you know. And I would love to hear from other people different ways of being and thinking and all that. But where I'm at, is just basically other people are awesome. I mean, it was so weird because it's like a huge, huge transformation. Like I was one of those people. I'm happy, and I still am kind of like that way. Like I'm happy being in the woods. The people are always on Facebook. Yeah, give me this cabin in the woods, and I'll go and fish and hunt, and I'll live by myself and just be happy with nature. Because nature is beautiful. I love nature, right? But then, you know, because I'm realizing I wanted to be separate from the world because they were just too weird for me. They were confusing. They were angry. They were antagonistic. Like, I had all these judgments about the whole world. Everybody was just too over the top for themselves and wanted to, to take, right? There were too many takers and not enough givers and carers to me, right? That was my perspective, and that was the way I felt about it, and I just would rather not be there. However, when I started sharing with people, right, how I feel, right, like just what I said to you, you know, like we need to care about each other. Like, wouldn't this? I started in community organizing, right? Wouldn't this community be better if we actually cared about each other? Like, if we waved to our neighbors, if we said hi, if we looked out for each other's kids, like, wouldn't the neighborhood be a whole lot? Wouldn't life be better? Wouldn't you feel more comfortable in your community, right? And so that's just how it started for me. Um, how I kind of broke out of my introverted, get away from the world shell. So Aaron says there are many things which we cannot control. Your attitude is the only thing you really have 100% control of. When I catch myself thinking negative, I make the decision to have a positive mental attitude. Yes, yes, it is a choice, right? And that's what's so cool about it. You just make the choice and do what you got to do afterward, right? Because that's how the mind works. Once you make a choice to go in a positive way, to say, okay, I want to be happy. I'm gonna try on this positive mental attitude thing. I don't know. I've been depressed for so long. I've been stressed for so long. I don't know if it's gonna work. However, I'm gonna try it out. That's what I always tell people. Just try this idea on for a while. It's not gonna kill you. You can always go back to the way that you used to be thinking and doing what you used to be doing. However, we all know you want something different. Try some different results. So who is this guy here calling in? We have Americha. What do you want to talk about, Maricha? Tell me, do you have a secret for happiness? How do you stay happy? So throw it in the chat or just stay in the conversation for a couple minutes here, and then we'll get you on. So you can get caught up to what we're talking about. So what we're talking about is actually how do you be happy? Okay. Um, and making that choice. So I was sharing a little bit about myself here before I get off the air. Is what worked for me was what they're actually recommending is giving, right? Giving that beauty that I saw in the world, that I saw that it was a possibility for us to be, to live, right? Because I see it in nature as it's like a web of life. However, what I've begun to recognize as I've gotten so integrated in other people now is that we are part of it and that we are our own interconnected web of system of life as well, right? And that our happiness actually comes from that recognition and nurturing of that body that we are, right? Um, because especially if we're not going to take the other option of being by ourselves out in the woods, we got to make our worlds a happy, peaceful place and loving place to live. We don't have to, but I'm telling you, it's actually funner, right? When you can get along, when you come home and you have a good relationship with your family, or you at least you have peace with your neighbors. You find some good communities out there to interact with. And this is not just me talking outside of my head. This has been scientifically proven. One of the longest studies ever undertaken by the Harvard, it actually is the longest study because it's still going on and it's like 70 years old. It's like crazy. This study they did about happiness. And they started with the kids that they had, and they went out and find some people as far, in lower social classes, because generally people who go to Harvard are not in the lower social classes, right? But they went out and they found people like that anyway, and they got them involved in the study. And they follow their life, and they go and they interview them every couple months or something, once or twice a year. And they did the same to their children. And they found that what is really the key to happiness, and it's relationships. It's having relationships that you can depend on, right? It's that social connectivity, and even our mental clarity and longevity is strengthened by having a strong relationship. Less likelihood of Alzheimer's, dementia, all those mental deteriorations. Even if the relationship is not necessarily all cookies and cream, just knowing that the other person is always going to be there, right? Keeps the mind sharp for well into their old age. So just think about that. There's a TED talk about it. I would share it if I could pull it up here in a couple seconds. I don't know if I saved it. I think I saved it on my Facebook or something. So it's going to take a while to find. But anyway, look it up. It's a Harvard study about happiness. And that was the conclusion. It's a short TED talk. It's really good. Um, so yeah, this is not just a hypothesis. This has been proven, right? So make your world happy. And really, it's to me, it's as simple as letting go of being right? Because when you stop fighting to be right with the people around you, you can allow them to be who they are, and then you can start to understand them. And you can see how that they're right as well. Even if you have a difference of opinion, you can see how they're right in their model of the world, and you can start to communicate within that model, within that understanding. But it takes you a moment to step back first, right? Because as long as you're being the aggressor, you're pushing your view, and they need to understand it. You're never going to understand them, right? And it's just truth. No matter how much we study each other, we're not the same, right? Regardless how similar we are in so many different ways, even if you do have things that you're similar with other people, there's still differences, right? And taking the time to understand the other person and to communicate with them, man, it's such a what's the word? It feels good. It feels good to the other person. Like, when you do that for them, they can feel it. They can, you know, they might not be able to articulate it, but there's like, that's where that rapport comes from. They're like, wow, I like this person. Oh, I really, this person gets me. Like, I really like this person. They may not even be able to process what you've done. That's what a lot of NLP is about. It's about being able to communicate in the frame of the other person, right? And when we as people take the time to really start to understand and communicate with each other, then we create that world that and then our world can start to reflect nature, right? Because nature has that natural balance and communication just moves, right? However, we're not separate from nature. We are part of it. And we have the intelligence, and all we need is the will, right? To bring that about. We already There's so many studies about personality and this new science of NLP and all the mind, and as we talk about this positive mental attitude, and there's been so much progress in our understanding of each other, and really, to me, the final step, so to speak, is to step back from ourselves, right? And recognize that, hey, we're just a cell in a body, and there's all these other cells, and we got to learn to communicate with each other. You know, we got to learn how our antennas and our receptors work. That's part of the cell's structure. You should really look up Bruce Lipton. He's really good at talking about cell structure and doing this metaphor better than me as far as how we can live together in a more happy world. So that's what I got today. It's almost an hour. I hope it has been helpful and uplifting to somebody out there, and that you put in the effort to be attractive to happiness, right? Give happiness, give understanding to somebody else, and watch it be attracted to you. When you be negative, when you put out negativity, you're just going to get it back. If you bicker and you complain about people, believe they're going to bicker and complain about you, right? It's just a natural repercussion. However, if you make it a habit to just point out the good in people, right? Do this in the next conversation and watch what happens. It's very interesting, especially if you've been working in the office or something, and then the person comes in and, okay, we're all going to talk about this person right now. They're always, leaving the coffee thing in the thing, and they don't take it out. Why don't they do that? And blah, blah, blah. And you just think of something good about that person. Yeah, but they write the best reports about such and such and such. And one or two things is going to happen. Either they'll change the subject, they'll keep talking and just like repel you from the conversation, right? Or they'll be like, yeah, that's right. They do that, and you could shift it to a positive, or they'll just decide not to talk to you, right? But because they just really want to go on ranting about this person. So it's really good if you have one or two things about that person, or another topic, because what it'll make everyone stop. It changes the direction of their thinking, basically. They're just thinking in a negative way, and you change it to like, oh, there's actually something good about this person here. Oh, they're not the devil. Oh, wow. What are we gonna talk about now? So then you basically have the floor. But yeah, I've done this quite a few times, so I know it's interesting to watch. And there's always someone also in that group who wants to talk about something else too, and they'll normally look at you like, oh, thank God. Oh, this was a sufferable conversation about this person. I'm like, I don't really feel that bad about that person, or I actually like that person, and they'll be like, oh, thank you for changing the subject, right? So anyway, that's just a recommendation as we head out here. Thank you everybody for joining me today. Thank you, Aaron, for getting up and joining us as well. Charlene, it has been a pleasure to fill in for you, and I'll look for you tomorrow morning. She will be back. Let me throw the links in there one more time if you want to sign up, and you can get this book. You can download it, and there's a couple other forms and worksheets and stuff about definite chief aim, etc., that go along with the book. Anyway, I have to talk for an hour, and I thank you guys for listening so much. I mean, I really do appreciate your time and attention, and it's been a pleasure. So, I've been visiting my parents, so I know they're like, oh, what are you doing up at 5 o'clock in the morning talking all day? But they know what's going on, and they appreciate it as well. So anyway, I'm going to sign off. It's been my pleasure, and here's the outro. Let's move forward with the day on purpose, with purpose, to grow our hearts, grow our minds, and grow our businesses. All right, everybody, I will see you next time.